Hi, everybody. This time I'm here with sound. I cannot believe that I managed to go 3 minutes without noticing that the microphone wasn't on last time. So, for a real highlight reel of me looking like an idiot, you can go back and check it out with the microphone on mute. My name's Evan, and I am here without Natalie. Usually we're here in the Fireside chat, and she's not able to be here today. But I came all the way down, and I really wanted to do it, so I thought, here I am, solo. I first wanted to give some real shout-outs to Alex for capturing this gripping image of the gardener here. You can see the gardener with her fire mugu setting the world ablaze. And that's one of the latest builds that we have gotten in the queue. And so we're really, really happy with how it's looking and shaping up. I want to talk about a few things. First of all, we did a stream last week with my kids, which was really fun for me because they seemed to really enjoy it, and I was so excited that they liked what they saw. You know, game testing is brutal sometimes, especially with people that are unforgiving, like 8-year-olds and so the fact that they wanted to play it for an hour and left wanting more was a really good sign for me. And it was also great to watch their reactions. We got to see a lot of people's reactions recently. We were at Bit Bazaar, which was a public event here in Toronto where people could come and sample games and buy merch. And yes, hello, Natalie. You just joined late. I was just saying Natalie's got called away. She's got an emergency she's got to deal with. So it's going to be a fireside chat of one. There's no Natalie here to present, but I can see how long I can talk for. But Bit Bazaar, I was saying, was a live event where we had a setup booth and we're showing people Terrorarium and some of the other games. And so we had a chance to watch people play, which, like I said, with my kids, is always really informative. And we always noticed that they had this one moment where the things that games train you for is that if there's something that's kind of a companion who follows you along and they're cute and lovable, they're not supposed to die. And almost everybody had this reflexive reaction where they were just like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that thing was gonna die, and like I didn't mean to throw it, and I'm sorry, oops, I won't do that next time. And then they transition. You could see this kind of moment. Even my kids were the same way. They were like, I don't want to lose any mugu, and then they come to this new realization where they say, that's the point of this game. There's a lot of these guys that are going to die. And then the whole thing shifts. And every time we were watching people react to the game, after they got over that initial cringe factor, they went, I'm really going to enjoy this game. And they sort of like jumped into this mindset of like, I am just a killing machine. And we keep using the phrase like a bull in a china shop mentality kind of sets on to people. And it happened with my kids in their stream last time, that they were just like, we're gonna wreck stuff, and so this demolition crew became this whole mindset behind the game. So it was really good to see and to reinforce that that's part of the right behavior that we wanted to hit upon. So we had great event there. And so thank you to Bit Bazaar for having us. And one of the things that connects us to Bit Bazaar is that we have a lot of help from one of the organizers, Henry Faber, who has come in semi-regularly to play the game, to give us advice, to help us meet some people that are relevant and helpful to the project. And what inevitably happens is that we think we know what we're doing, and then suddenly we have that meeting. And yet again, it happened. Every time we think we can predict what's going to happen, and it never happens. And it's really because this outside voice comes in and says, guys, you're not looking at this. And we're like, we had been avoiding looking at that for the reason that we didn't really know what it was going to be about. for Vodka 7 Up, I would love to stream with Henry. We got to really work on a time when he could come by and join us and talk about it on live stream. He's a really interesting guy and is working on a lot of different games at any given time. So we value his opinion, but often his opinion is to derail our current week's plans. And so that happened yet again. We had these 2 parallel streams. We've been working on a version of this game that really is meant to be kind of the juiciest, polished version that we can build. And then we also need to go back to basics because we are at a point where we now know what the game is about, and we just need to refine the mechanics of that so that they all line up. Right now, we've got a problem with Mugu movement, where they kind of jump at different points and sometimes fall off the edge of the world, which is not something that helps you. So we've got to refine some of those things, and we also have been talking a lot about maker mode. So we're in the middle of many conversations about that, and it leads me to something that I wanted to talk about today because it's on my mind a lot lately about how subjective, constantly subjective the world of maker mode, the world of game design is and game development, and what I want to talk about was the feeling that I have friends who are actors, professional actors, and I have myself with a very limited acting career, but amateur career, and I want to talk about what it's like to do an audition, and because when you're just up in front of people, you get up in front of people at an audition, you try your hardest, and you try to be what they're wanting, and then you either get accepted or rejected for the role, and it is so hard to separate that from yourself, that rejection or not is somehow a part of the role or its appropriateness. We were looking for someone taller, we were looking for a female lead instead of a male lead, whatever it might be. It's really, really hard because you often don't get that feedback, not to just let it project on yourself, to just not beat yourself up about, I'm not good enough, and will I ever be able to change who I am? So that's something that actors struggle with, and I really was struck today about how there's so much about game design that has that same vulnerable feeling of how you put yourself out there with the subjective choices that you're making all the time. And I don't mean that as like game development proper, like that we as a packaged company are putting that out there. I mean, even within our company, there is a non-stop demand for your opinions and your many times informed but arbitrary choices, that you get to a point where you're like, how high should Mugu fly? We've decided that they're going to fly, but what does flying mean? Do they spin around? Do they go this high? Do they go low? And you just have to choose. And it's like you could defer to somebody else and say, I need to move forward. I need a decision on this. And then it's just delegating that subjective choice to somebody else, because we're building a completely new universe with new rules and like new morality and all of these things. And there are a million different choices that come along with that. And what happens is that you put a little bit of yourself into every one of those choices. Like there's a little emotional part of you that lives in that decision. And there are so many reasons that it can be right and it can be wrong. And what happens is that you get to these moments where something else changes the reason that needs to, instead, we need to fly high in an arc instead of straight. Fine. We understand the reasons why, but it tugs at you. And it tugs at you the same way that being an actor would be, which is that you say like, well, I made that decision, and now that it's been revealed as the wrong decision, it's hard for me not to take that on myself, because who else is to blame for that choice? And I just, it's really fascinating how it's just in the micro levels, constantly opening yourself up to that. And it's something I wanted to talk about today, especially because of a whole conversation that's been going on online about the kinds of, like, just the brutal reactions of fans that come up when the game is not what they imagined, and so there's a lot of people in the independent game scene who are just talking about wishing that there was more constructive, sort of compassionate sort of feedback to things, like, this isn't going well, and this is going well. It's tough though, because, like, there's such a level of anonymity to it that you don't have any sense of the people playing that game, and the you only want to talk about the thing that you want solved. You're not going to focus on, like, what's the need for heaping praise on somebody. There's a problem in your game and I want it fixed. That's the kind of thinking that goes on, and the difficulty is that other people have other problems and that they sometimes contradict each other. The thing that really strikes me is what it's like to constantly be told that you're not good enough, and how it can be really difficult to separate that from your own sense of self and self-worth. And so, people say, like, you got to have a thick skin about it, but you're like, but there's a piece of me that lives in that game, and it being judged is hard to separate. The Vodka 7-Up is asking me about what's the meanest reaction you've heard that you can share without getting taken off Twitch. The stuff that hurts the most is the stuff that you kind of knew was something that wasn't great. Like, if you worked really hard on the Mugu, but you knew that the monster at the end of the level was the thing where you had to cut some corners. It's really hard to have all the attention placed on that one thing, because it's like it's already kind of raw for you, and you agree with it. It's like, that's the worst part, is like, if you have flaws yourself and then someone points them out, it's just like, oh, that was it wasn't just something that could be dismissed. It's like, it was actually true. It was, you got a good point, and I have to admit that I can't change that. Those are the kinds of terrible things that you dread getting it, and then you get it, you're like, oh, damn it, they're right. So we're hoping to get that kind of stuff earlier, at a point where we can change and pivot a lot. And this is why I keep pushing us to launch way ahead of our budget, is that we know our budget will last us to the end of the year, but we need to get something out there sooner, so that when we do get that feedback and we go, oh, they got a point, we actually can fix it, because we have the time and the budget to work on it. What's interesting just recently is how it's not always about gamer. It's not always about the end user. It's also sometimes about people within the team, that people disagree, and there's sometimes a moment where you're like, oh, this is really just, are you right or are you right? because I see that you don't agree with each other, and one of you is not going to win this and still have to like show up the next day and not take any offense to that, or work forward in that. And that is something that is especially difficult as we make a transition away from client work. We've been doing a lot of work for a lot of people, and what you learn is that they're always right. You know, that the client's judgment on a project is what the project's going to be, and they help define the scope of it, and they help define the approvals of it. And so you have this external voice that you can look at and say, okay, well, I might be right in my own heart, but I am doing something that somebody else wants. And it's very, very difficult when you're a team, an independent team, that is looking at colleagues and saying, okay, you like this, I like this, both of us are invested in it, and one of us has to come away from it feeling like they didn't get their feelings hurt. But because it is so subjective, it's like, well, what didn't you like about it? Was it that it was from me? Was it that it didn't suit your view of the game, and so it's more about your game than it is about my game? And we are constantly navigating that, not just in big flare-ups, but in the like micro moments of decisions, and like, I hope they like what I'm doing, and like, do my other teammates need me and value me? So that's the kind of stuff that is just really interesting to see about how much subjectivity is present in this project, and how that comes through. No. There's a comment about do we work it out with like American Gladiator style? No. And we even had a whole conversation in the office about new Nerf guns. There was a brand new Nerf product that came out, and I was like, no, we're not having Nerf guns in our office. And part of it is just like, this is a safe place for us. Like, gunplay is not the culture we need. It's not. It's very hard for everybody to buy into that magic circle of a Nerf gun battle, and it is not something that comes up during office hours when you're in the deepest parts of programming in Unity, or doing sound design or anything like that. So no, we don't work it out with that. We work it out with trying to understand each other's position, and then what we need to do is actually pull rank. And what we're doing right now is saying, like, who has the authority in this situation, and okay, we're gonna go with it that way, because we're trying to move forward. And when we hit those impasse moments, we give it a moment for consensus, but then we have to say, no, this is not the decision maker who's bringing this forward. The decision has been made. It's tricky, and we're trying to include our users as part of those decisions. So, when we get your feedback, we have to say, is it all stuff that we're going to do, or are we going to pick and choose different features that we'd like to hear? That's interesting. I mean, what it means is that we have to kind of understand our roles better on the team, and who is what decision maker for which portion of the project. And that is a constant kind of like human resource sort of discussion that goes on. So I really wanted to talk today about the feedback that we've been getting, which has been that this project is constantly shifting, but we're starting to feel like we do know what we love about it. That these moments of going crazy and kind of watching the effects in the space are really what people seem to just revel in. It's also, I'm changing topics a bit, but I was going to talk a bit today about what it's like to constantly have your plans changing on you. Like, it's just, independent game development is like, running on quicksand, so to speak, because we just a few days ago knew how this game was going to finish. We had the entire scope of this game written out, and we had a meeting today in which we kind of cut the knees out from under that, and it put us into a situation where we were like, we know what the next 2 weeks looks like, but very little beyond that. And that is that I think that's probably the other biggest challenge that we have with this game, is that just when we think we can see the end in sight, we learn something, or we have a hunch about something, and then we go and we test it with other people, and we say, you know what, damn it, that wasn't the solution. And so when we've got to go back and reassess some things. So we're trying. Right now the conversation is about the number of Mugu. You can see right here that we've got Fire Mugu, and you probably have seen game demos that show you the dense Mugu that we have, which are heavier and they can break stuff. And we are now toying with 8 total styles, so that's 6 new styles of Mugu. And I don't know if I want to reveal all of them here, but we're going to be revealing them on social media. But they all have different properties, and you can swap between them. The concept as it stands is that you are kind of doing a loadout at the beginning of a game where you're trying to pick which properties you want to bring with you when you go and visit a new planet and do a new sort of raid. And depending on which ones you bring with them, you can do different things. Some of the levels were going to be designed so that you can succeed with different things, and some things you can't. So choosing carefully is going to be a piece of that. So, Vodka 7-Up is now needling me with just like things like RPG and FPS elements. No. We are not changing. One thing that we are solid on is this art style. You can see the art behind me now, and I gotta tell you, we get more comments than anything else about the style of the art and the strength of that. And so this is the look of Terrorarium, and we have put together some visual elements like for social media that I'm so excited about releasing to you guys. So that's staying the same. Interacting with the world through Mugu is staying the same. It's just a question of like, what is our level design? And I think we're going to come back next week with some interesting conversations about level design and what we've learned from diving deep into that this next time. So Natalie, who normally is our host, as I said, she's not able to be here, but she would probably be doing next week with Wayne. We'll try and see if she's pulling him in. I am going to wrap it up fairly early because I feel like it's not something you need me to ramble too much about. Normally I speak for about this long and she speaks the other half. So we'll call this even. And I really wanted to thank everybody who tunes in. This is really a great vehicle for us to sort of unload about what we're doing with this project. And although it was a bit high level today, I really wanted to thank you for listening in about just some of the emotional investment that you can make in games and what it's like to be working on a project where the plan keeps getting reevaluated. These are big challenges that we face with this project, and we're constantly trying to navigate that space. So I hope you have a great evening, and I want to thank you for joining me, and I'm glad that the microphone worked this time. I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.